people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. Ring 4, Night of Champions. It was exactly that.
Yes.
As Abdullah Mason became world champion, WBO world champion in the lightweight division,
Yes.
beating the hard-nosed Sam Noakes.
What we saw.
Sam Noakes lived up to his reputation as a hard-nosed, hard-punching slugger in this fight. Not very many bells and whistles to his game.
Not the flashiest of fighters, but effective. Very effective in applying pressure. He had Abdullah Mason under a lot of it.
Though if Abdullah was able to pull away from Sam Noakes as the fight progressed, I think it's because Abdullah, from the start of this fight to the middle and towards the end, made a conscious effort to go to Sam's body.
Periodically getting in with body punches from the start to the middle to the end of the fight, so that by the end of it, Sam is a bit worse for wear, noticeably more tired than Abdullah Mason,
with less to give. Consistent body attack is what I think won Abdullah Mason this fight and took the air out of the tires for a very game Sam Noakes. Sam, who at times was getting in with very clean jabs, snapping Abdullah Mason's head back, and a few backhands, a few right hands.
There did look to be more power and more pop on Sam's punches than Abdullah's. Now, maybe it's because Sam is a few years older than Abdullah. He's basically a grown man, whereas Abdullah,
He's only 21 years old. Sam Noakes is 28, close to 30. Abdullah's only 21. His grown man strength would have not come in yet, but he was still very effective, still very accurate, and even hurt Sam Noakes a couple of times off some clean uppercuts.
rattled his cage.
Uppercuts up the middle that staggered, very durable, Sam Noakes and halted his forward momentum. Abdullah Mason did manage to back up and back off Sam Noakes in spots, won many of the exchanges in the pocket, though not without looking a bit vulnerable.
Yeah, defensively there were vulnerabilities there.
Which I don't think is the end of the world for a 21-year-old fighter, that if Abdullah seems a bit inexperienced at times, it's because he is. He's only 21. 7-5 is how I scored the fight. 7-5 to Abdullah Mason, or a draw.
The prediction stuck. The fight was a lot harder for Abdullah than I thought it would be, but he won the fight. I picked him to win the fight. He's the newly crowned WBO champion. He delivered.
So did Sam.
I think for a lot of people on this side of the world, that was the first time they'd ever seen Sam Noakes, and I think a lot of them would have liked what they saw, that even though he lost the fight, it wasn't by that much. And he did a good job of making the fight competitive and making Abdullah Mason work for every round that he picked up. So Sam Noakes would have gained some fans yesterday, even in defeat.
A good effort from Sam Noakes and a winning effort from Abdullah Mason, who is now WBO lightweight champion. Onward and upward.
Congratulations to him. The prediction stuck.
And another one that did. Bam Rodriguez versus Puma Martinez.
Even I didn't think this was going to be as lopsided as it was. I thought that it might be a bit more competitive, that Puma might be able to give Bam more of a fight than he actually gave him.
Looking back, Puma Martinez was never in this fight, ever. The reason for it is why I picked Bam to win in the first place. Those fancy feet and Bam's ability to cut angles.
It's deceiving. Bam's opponent might feel like he's within striking distance and then he just pivots and dips off to the side.
He doesn't necessarily exit the pocket so much as quickly darting to another part of it. And in doing so, made Puma Martinez look quite the fool. Puma Martinez spent so much time swinging for the fences, hitting nothing but air, that it wasn't long before he'd burned through his energy reserves, and he had significantly slowed down, breathing with his mouth open, running on fumes, as Bam consistently peppered him with punches in between his own punches.
Shit was target practice.
It's the story of the fight. Puma's trying for a lot of punches that are not landing, that are not getting in, leaving himself open to be countered, so he gets countered over and over and over. 10 rounds that this fight lasted. I didn't give Puma Martinez a single round, not a one.
Didn't win a round.
And as the fight approached the midway point and progressed, I started to wonder what was holding Puma Martinez up. Because he was clearly lost in the sauce, getting hit, couldn't land something meaningful to save his life.
Noticeably tired, you could see that on his body language. The guy was exhausted. They say that you burn through twice as much energy missing a punch as if you would have hit something. And Puma missed a lot of punches from the opening round.
So he'd burned through his energy reserves early on.
As Bam, very calm, cool, and composed, just picked him off. Landing counters here and there, landing punches here and there, taking his time, not rushing his work, and not getting ahead of himself, never letting Puma Martinez into this fight. In the 10th round,
Puma tries for a big backhand, misses, then gets hit with a backhand of his own, what was a textbook slip and counter from Bam Rodriguez.
what was a picture-perfect slip and counter.
Bam Rodriguez floors Fernando for the first and only time in the fight, so visibly exhausted. Fernando just didn't have enough to rise to his feet, couldn't beat the count, so Bam collects a third alphabet title in the men's super flyweight division, bringing him one step closer to becoming its inaugural undisputed champion. Fernando was intended to be number 2 at the weight. He was intended to be a stiff test for Bam Rodriguez, though he was anything but.
This turned out to be one of Bam's easiest fights. Sonny Edwards gave Bam a harder fight than this. Fumalela Kafu gave him a harder fight than this.
Ahead of the fight, veteran trainer Robert Garcia said that he felt Puma Martinez was made to order for Bam Rodriguez, that stylistically, Bam is going to eat him up. And he was right. Though it's not because Puma's not a good fighter. Puma actually is a good fighter with a good resume, good wins over then champions Jerwin Ancajas, Kazuto Ioka.
Puma's actually an all-right fighter. It's just that there's a difference between being all-right and being great. Bam is a great fighter, an excellent fighter, pound for pound, in the sport.
My prediction video, I said that Bam's gonna eat this guy up, and the difference between them is Bam's feet. He's able to cut angles and get around the side of a guy, find holes in the guard to put punches in, where Puma's too simple, too easy to hit. Bam's gonna pick him apart, and so he did, in style. This was one of Bam's more dominant performances, and against an unbeaten fighter, unbeaten champion, no less. He wanted to put a stamp on it. Fighting on a big show. I felt that Bam was up for this because of who else was on the card and Bam's desire to not just win, but steal the show. Make an impression. I think he did. Congratulations to him. Another prediction that stuck.
And now for the one that didn't.
Haney versus Norman was said by many to be the unofficial main event of this entire card, that in many ways, between Devin's team and Brian's team, they stole the show with their pre-fight build-up, all that chatter and all that talk.
Oh yeah, Americans eat that shit up.
Just for another ho-hum Devin Haney points win, points decision. The bookies had the fight at even money going in.
50-50.
Was previously thought that Devin Haney, so shell-shocked from the Ryan Garcia fight well over a year ago, and based on the scared performance he put on with Jose Ramirez,
He would lose.
not the case. So you can imagine everybody's surprise when the light-punching Devin Haney, who hasn't knocked anybody out in 7 years, scores an early knockdown on the oncoming Brian Gore-Tex, who was looking to close the distance, get on the inside. I think many of us were lost on Brian Gore-Tex's personality in the build-up, southern charm, in tandem with the intangibles that preceded Devin Haney based on how he'd been looking in his last 2 fights. Couldn't see the forest through the trees.
Brian got outclassed in there. The shit was embarrassing. The whole fight, I felt a sense of second-hand embarrassment for the Normans, who did little more than talk a good one in the build-up and made fools of us all.
Brian looked like a fish out of water out there. He couldn't get anything going at any point in this fight, couldn't land anything of any substance, survives the early knockdown.
Goes on to get outclassed.
With somebody in the live chat during a fight that said Devin Haney's turning into Demetrius Andrade. You know how Demetrius will knock a guy down early, but he won't finish him? That's what happened yesterday.
This fucking fight sucked all the air out of the room, I'll be honest. Mason versus Noakes was a great watch. So was Puma versus Bam, but this?
Boring!
It's not even just that Devin Haney won per se, so much as how he won. Wouldn't have been so bad if he put on a show. To say that Devin outclassed Brian is an accurate statement.
Brian couldn't find him.
Though a lot of what won Devin Haney this fight, single jabs, movement, range control, it's not the kind of stuff that makes a boxing match entertaining. And in those few moments where Brian was able to close the distance on Devin,
What did Devin do?
clinch. Devin decided to hold repeatedly, which is an effective tactic to smother a guy's work, but it doesn't make for an entertaining night of boxing. This whole fight is a blur to me looking back, because all I remember about it is the knockdown. After that, it's just Devin moving around and landing single punches, though not really laying into Brian Norman.
Move, land a single jab, land a single punch, move. That's the story of the fight. That's how Devin won. And that's why there ain't that many people celebrating this Devin Haney win. If the Haneys were insufferable before this fight, just imagine how they're going to be now. In beating Brian Norman, outclassing him, because he did do that, he became a 3-weight world champion.
Some of us had hoped that this would spell the end for Devin Haney, that we wouldn't have to put up with this Mayweather wannabe anymore. Not the case. And what truths were revealed as a result of this fight's outcome? Now we see why the Normans were sandbagging it with Boots. If Devin Haney can knock you down, Boots Ennis can more than knock you out. And that's why they priced themselves out of that fight. Underneath it all, they knew what their limitations were.
Yesterday's fight, if it was a testament to anything, it was why the Normans ducked Jaron Ennis.
Plain as day.
Buyer's remorse, so many of us having drunk the Kool-Aid, thinking that Brian Norman packed a big enough punch to hurt Devin Haney and get him out of there.
Couldn't do it.
So many other fighters at lighter weights had more success against Devin than Brian Norman when you think about it. Linares had more success, Jojo Diaz, Lomachenko certainly. A lot of people are convinced Lomachenko beat him.
So many fighters at lighter weights did a better job against Devin than Brian did. His size, his power, if it was even real, it didn't matter.
This fucking fight sucked, man. Now we gotta put up with the Haneys a while longer. Connor Benn was in attendance for the fight, seated next to Eddie Hearn, pretending to nod off, as we all were.
Unimpressed. Thus, upon Connor Benn's return to the welterweight division, I don't think fighting Devin Haney will rank all that high on his to-do list, because
He's fucking boring. You gotta pay him through the nose just to get him to do anything, and when he does it, it's not even entertaining.
it's fucking boring.
It's the one prediction I got wrong yesterday, over to another that I got right. Benavidez versus Yarde. I went with David Benavidez to be faster in the pocket than Anthony Yarde, beating him to the punch and thus winning a points decision. David went a step further and forced a 7th round stoppage.
Waking everybody in the audience up.
What we saw, Anthony Yarde backpedaling, trying to create space between him and the oncoming David Benavidez, looking to set up a big counter. What perhaps was not a good idea, because in doing so, he ended up on the ropes time and time again, allowing David Benavidez to unload. There were a lot of zesty exchanges in this fight, most of which David Benavidez won because he was the faster fighter of the two, which is what I already thought.
That's why I picked him to win.
This was the most impressive I've ever seen David in what has turned out to be his short light heavyweight campaign.
We all know why. We all know what he announced after the fight.
But as far as the fight itself and why David won it, Anthony Yarde made the mistake of backpedaling too much, allowing David to corner him on the ropes and unload combinations. And in the exchange, which is what I already thought, David's got the faster hands of the two. Anthony might be the harder puncher, but it counts for nothing if you're getting beaten to the punch.
Think Anthony's the harder puncher?
He might have been, but he wasn't able to connect often enough on David because David's beating him to the punch. He's stringing together rapid-fire combinations, slicing up Anthony Yarde's face.
Is that the worst we've ever seen Anthony Yarde beaten?
You know that it might actually be. That might be the worst we've ever seen Anthony Yarde. But anecdotally, when you've already been knocked out by Sergey Kovalev and already battered by Artur Beterbiev, David coming in after them and stopping Anthony, it doesn't mean as much.
Impressive as he looked yesterday, all he really did was stop a guy who had been stopped 2 times already over the years.
So there's not a whole lot to it. and how the fight played out. David Benavidez stayed in character, marching forward, throwing punches in bunches. Anthony responded as best as he could, but he kept getting peppered with shots in between, kept cornering himself.
In trying to create space, he backed himself into a corner.
What Anthony should have done as soon as he felt his back touch those ropes is pivot, spin off of those ropes. Don't make yourself an easy target. Don't just stay there. My initial prediction was that David Benavidez's hand speed would be enough that Anthony's going to keep the earmuffs on as to not get hit, and thus David would beat him on activity. Credit to David that he went a step further and forced a stoppage. No surprises here, though.
We already know what's next for David Benavidez per his post-fight announcement, but where does Anthony go from here? What does he do?
Hard to say, because any steam he would have had for a domestic showdown with a Joshua Buatsi or a Callum Smith would have dissipated based on this demoralizing loss. It was the worst I've ever seen Anthony Yarde in a fight. And moving forward, you could still do those domestic matchups, but you do them with the understanding that most people are expecting Anthony to lose, so it's not as big as it would have been.
And rating the card.
Ring 4, Night of the Champions, as a card in its entirety, was many times better than Ring 3 in Times Square.
Ring 3 was a bust. In spite of all the marquee names on the show, Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, that was a bust. That was a dud. Whereas this card mostly delivered. Abdullah's fight was entertaining, as was Bam's, and David Benavidez at the finish. The only dud was Devin Haney, but what do you expect? It's Devin Haney.
Now, what the card brought to light over the weekend was DAZN's Ultimate Tier package, and how some of us don't yet know if we're going to be on board, as it would require an annual commitment, a year-long commitment, where the customer doesn't really know what they're buying into. The promise is that if you subscribe to the Ultimate Tier, you will be given at least one pay-per-view fight every month in the calendar year.
At no additional charge.
Though who's to say that every pay-per-view they do in the coming calendar year will be pay-per-view worthy? And therein lies the dilemma. You don't really know what you're buying into. Are there actually 12 or more fights to make in the sport of boxing that constitute a pay-per-view that warrant the additional cover charge? Even if this weekend's pay-per-view was value for money and it was worth it, that's not to say that every pay-per-view is going to be like that, and that's supposed to be part of the sales pitch.
You're going to get all these pay-per-view cards, these pay-per-view fights. How many of those fights include Devin Haney? Because I don't want to see him anymore.
And how many of those fights you plan on doing wouldn't have been billed as regular fights if not for you to create this illusion that you're saving us money? Because I think about the Inouye versus Picasso fight towards the end of this year, and I ask myself, when have I ever had to pay extra to see Naoya Inoue?
This isn't even one of his bigger fights. I got to see him against Luis Nery. I got to see him against Stephen Fulton at no additional charge, where now I have to pay $60 to see him?
And this isn't even one of his bigger fights. So the Ultimate Tier via DAZN is still a subject of contention brought to light by this weekend's card, which was good.
But how many of the cards they do are going to be as good as this one?